Welcome to Opa Zao, where Opa always means excited and Zao always means
living.
That's recent and compared with ancient Greek. Therefore, a dual generation podcast where because the world needs a little more
Positive.
Sweet. This is Mike and
TC.
Hey, what's happening?
Not much.
We've got a great guest coming on, and we're going to do a little Q&A last minute. Father Darrin, I'm not sure how he'll refer to himself because of his awesome opportunity here in the LA area of what he gets to do. We're going to dial him in a second, but TC, how's your week?
It was a rough one. I'm not gonna lie. You guys can probably tell from the beginning of this podcast that my voice is gonna be a little hoarse.
What?
This episode.
Horse. You know who that reminds me of?
I do not.
Paul Ray.
Okay. What?
Horse. The farm. Kentucky.
Oh,
come on. Sorry,
I'm
flashback.
sorry.
I had a little flashback.
I got the morning grogs as well. It's like I said, it's been a rough week. I went to the ER, work, fun stuff.
Yeah, tell me about that. How'd that happen?
Okay, Sunday
morning. Not that it was
morning.
exciting, but...
No, I mean, it can be if you like pain, but it was Sunday morning. I woke up, the upper left side of my body, like my neck, my trap, my shoulder, my delt, my back, were like sore / what do you say? What's the word for it? I don't know. It was kind of sore. No, it didn't hurt. It was, I don't know. Okay, so it was sore.
Okay, all right.
And then I progressed through the day, and the pain kind of goes to my chest and the left side of my chest, and it feels like someone's stabbing me, right? And so I get to work. At this point, it's really hard to walk, and so I have to do compliance testing for the whole week. So I'm sitting down on a computer for 6 hours a day, and I'm in the chair, I'm swiveling around, and then the more I breathe deeper, the more it hurts, the more I move, the more it feels like the knife's going deeper, and then I have to go to my supervisors. I tell them, I really don't think I could be here, guys. I apologize. This is who I am.
Wow.
But I think I need to go to the hospital. Call my mom. She comes, picks me up, take me to the ER. We're there for like 6 hours. My dad comes, my girlfriend comes, and then they gave me a shot of anti-inflammatory into my right arm, took some blood, took some samples, EKG, all the fun stuff.
Yeah, checking for the heart, and what was the determined? Gas?
They couldn't figure it out,
Okay.
and the shot really helped, but the next day kind of came back a little bit, so I was on bed rest, and then went to work the next day. Probably should have stayed home again, but,
Are you de-stressing?
Yeah, I am definitely de-stressing. It's been a relaxing kind of week, and now the pain is in my throat. So I don't know what's going on with me.
Maybe it's going to work itself out into one big burp, and it's all gone.
I think that's what's going to happen.
Okay, that's when I'm going to I'm sending the positive vibes that it's just a buildup of something, and it's going to go.
Thank you. I need that right now. Positive vibes only, guys. Open out.
All right, for TC. Hey, I'm going to, excuse me, while you keep talking about that, I'm going to pipe in Father Darrin, and we're ready to go, and we're going to explain a little bit about what he's doing here in the greater LA area. I'm excited about it. I had a great breakfast brunch. It's kind of more of a brunch with him a couple weeks ago. So,
okay.
All right, TC. Here we go. Let's find out where
Let's get Father Darrin on the air.
Here it comes. All right.
I would try to stay silent as
possible.
possible.
Number maybe.
Yeah.
Well, that's ringing pretty loud.
I have to agree with that one. It's a little.
Hello, this is Father Darrin.
It is Father Darrin. This is Mike Bearden. How you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Great. Here's my co-host, TC.
Hey, how you doing, Father?
Good. Good to talk to you guys.
Great to talk to you. Sorry we had to get past this little technical challenge, which I don't know what happened, but it is raining, and so anything can happen.
Mm-hmm.
But
right. In fact, for a second, I thought I couldn't get through because of the rain, so that's good. We got through.
What's a little rain? We can do this.
Exactly.
Well, Father, thanks.
It's raining so hard. Go ahead.
I just want to thank you for joining us here on our podcast.
Hey, thanks for the honor. I appreciate it.
Trust me, the honor's ours. And I had such a great time a few weeks back having brunch with you. And where was that? Where did we eat? What was it called, that place?
It's called Rock'em Egg.
Rock'em Egg.
That sounds so familiar. I think I've been there. I swear.
It's an Eagle Rock, so I guess they were doing a play on words with the rock.
Pretty smart branding idea.
Regardless of, it was a selling point for me because I think I had the Eggs Benedict. Is that correct, I think?
Yes, and I had the Monte Cristo Eggs Benedict, which was really good, too.
Oh, it was fantastic. I didn't have to eat the rest of the day. It was awesome. Hey, during our discussion, we had so much fun. I wanted to, and I reached out and I said, hey, wouldn't it be great to just, I love what you're going to be doing. And so I thought we'd give you a few moments with a little Q&A from TC and I to find out more about what is around the corner for you. and how it plays specifically out here in the entertainment industry. But most importantly, if you could intertwine or weave in the importance of listening in what you're going to be doing.
Sure.
Awesome. So if we interrupt you with a question, that's just kind of what we do. We're weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
So go for
So
it.
where do you want me to begin? I'm a Roman Catholic priest who has been given permission from I'll just call him my boss, since most people won't understand the word provincial.
Oh.
So my boss has given me permission to evangelize through media. So I'm working on my first TV show where I interview famous, in this case, Catholic men. And the two Catholic men that I'm going to be interviewing first are the producers, directors, and writers of the movie coming out in the end of the month called Unplanned, where a woman, her name is Abby Johnson. She works for Planned Parenthood, but had a conversion experience, and now is pro-life. And so these two friends of mine, Chuck and Carrie, are going to be my first interview. And my hope there is kind of to come up with like a spiritual video history. So, and I got the idea from Steven Spielberg back in the 90s after he'd done the movie Schindler's List. He decided to interview all the Holocaust survivors back then. And so it kind of sparked an idea in my mind about 10 years ago. And so now I kind of want to have a history of people who are famous that people wouldn't really ask the spiritual questions on their life. For example, Vin Scully, the famous broadcaster of the Dodgers.
Right.
Most people don't realize he's a very strong, devout, practicing Catholic, been going to church for years. But people know him as a great sportscaster, but they don't know him as a spiritual guy who loves Jesus and his church. So I think that story needs to be told.
Wow.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Well, those are some... like, we don't get those kind of guests.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
That's incredible. So what initially launched your heart to kind of want to do that? What sparked that?
You know, when I wanted to become a priest about 31 years ago, or 32 years ago, I wanted to work in the buzzword back in the 80s was communication. Be a communication major. And that's probably what I would have been. That was the joke. You know, football players and athletes were all communication
Yep.
majors. But I always loved entertainment. It was in fifth grade that I made my very first camera out of a shoebox, and I just really fell in love with photography and video. My mom had a modeling agency back in Santa Barbara, and she used to use her video camera to teach the girls how to do the catwalk for fashion shows. And I got hooked on being a cameraman. And then this opportunity with my order to, instead of being behind the camera, more importantly, come up with stories and ideas that could evangelize and spread the gospel in very creative ways that I thought would be not too preachy, but very thought-provoking to have people, make their own decisions, but more importantly, to have a really strong message. And if you watch Hollywood back in the 30s and 40s, a lot of their movies were great messages, but they were technically secular movies, but really good storytelling.
So let me recap here. You made a camera out of a box.
He can't get over
A
this.
shoebox. Okay. And you got permission from your boss.
Yes.
Which boss?
Jesus and
Okay, all right.
my,
There we go. We had to confirm on that one.
I had to fact check that because our friend Greg, who puts us together, I don't want any bubbles showing up on our YouTube video. Like, fact check. Don't fact check that one, Greg.
I got a lot of bosses.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. TC, you have any question for him?
Yeah, Greg was telling... No, I'm not sorry, Greg. Mike was telling me earlier this week that you preach sometimes at USC, and as being a big USC fan, and my dad actually attended SC, he's a graduate from there, I was just wondering how you ended up there, and how you ended up preaching over there.
Well, I'm actually a chaplain over at the Keck and Norris Medical Centers, like one day a week where I visit patients. I'm not really saying... Yeah. But, I mean, I go there, I visit patients, and unfortunately, it seems like every time I go there every week, there's always somebody who I'm giving, quote-unquote, last rites to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very sad situation. Some of these patients are really, they're at the, their lowest, health. And it's been good to be there to comfort the people on their, the most, sad moments in their lives.
Absolutely.
So,
well, that's
but I do say mass, and I do preach over at San Gabriel Mission on Sundays every once in a while. It's one of our parishes that we run.
Awesome. Good for you, man. Good for you.
That's got to be rough.
Yeah.
How important is listening, perhaps not to the patient, but the relatives that might be there during that moment?
That's a great question.
It's great. That is a good question, because 90% of the time I'm not talking. I'm literally just standing there listening, listening to their story. How they're obviously they're angry, they're upset, they're hurt, they're shocked. I mean, there's so many. Every emotion in the world is definitely present in one conversation, and there's really nothing you can say to somebody. You know what? Like, it's God's will that your wife is dying, your husband's dying. You don't say that stuff. You just kind of listen to them and let them vent, and they'll ask questions why. I mean, one lady, I was her last week. She didn't want to turn off the machines because she thought it would be killing her husband, and she didn't realize the disease was taking her husband's life. But she didn't want the guilt of turning the machines off. She wanted to keep them on forever, and at $50,000 a day, that's a lot of money for something that's an inevitable, and you have to deal with those questions, and no matter how hard you try, you sometimes people just aren't listening because they're traumatized.
Wow. That's got to be a rough situation to approach. I mean, when you're in that type of situation and you have to speak to those people and to those relatives, do you come in with a mindset of listening, or how do you personally approach that situation?
Well, this last story I was telling you about, I was asked, the wife asked me to come into the room and be support for her. So I was listening to the doctors talk. There's like 4 doctors, 3 social workers, all her family. There's almost like 20 of us in a room. And what I've been told is when you're under PTSD, no matter what you say to the person, they're not listening. And they must have told her 5, 6, 7 different ways that your husband's not going to get better, and there's no other thing. And she never asked my opinion. All I could say at that moment was, the mother of your husband, your mother-in-law, is coming into town. When she comes into town, you should probably make the decision then, because there was nothing you could do or say to her to make her understand. She just couldn't do it. She just didn't have the mental capacity at the moment, because she thought she'd be killing her husband. So I had to listen, hear what they're saying, and then tell her, because I figured if her mother-in-law was there, they're going to say the same things, and then her mother-in-law would agree that her husband, sometimes you just have to be patient. So she had to wait a couple of days, and I have no idea what happened after that, because I left the hospital, and so it's weird when you leave a situation, you never know how it ends too.
Yeah.
Well, there's no doubt that listening's one of your top talents and your top requirements for that kind of work. And I want to swing it back into this production that you're going to be part of as well. I remember what's your tag? What's your little gimmick? What's it called?
Yeah, the show is called Hound of Heaven, and my little personal nickname is Father Fedora, like the hat. So
I love that. Great idea.
And that's a whole story in itself, and I don't think you want to go into that. But the Hound of Heaven is a very, unless you want to hear that story.
I mean, we got time if you would like to share that with us.
If you can give it to us in like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was doing a fundraiser in Prescott, Arizona, and I was doing an interview on a local radio station. And one of my little things, I used to wear my fedora, and I was doing a dance. I was a dancer for a fundraiser, and so I came into the radio station with my fedora on, and the co-host Ron goes, "Hey, it's the father with the fedora," and I just kind of stuck in my head, and I go, I like that title. I like that nickname. So I ran it by a few people. I said, what do you think of Father Fedora? It's kind of a production nickname so people can recognize the name. So they might not remember my name, but they'll remember that, my little shtick and my little logo. And that's kind of how Father Fedora came about.
Wow.
So it's Hound of Heaven. Is it like Hound Dog, or what's Hound?
Yes. So Hound Dog, exactly. it was written. It's a poem written by Francis Thompson. And if you go back to the history of him, he was an opiate drug addict, London streets, got saved by a bunch of monks and had a conversion experience, and then started writing these poems and became considered literally the best poet in the English language.
Huh.
J.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, G.K. Chesterton, they all attribute their writing genius to this man.
Interesting.
And that says, yeah. And so his poem, The Hound of Heaven, you'd have to find some modern translation because the Old English is tough to get through. But it's basically about a guy who left Jesus, left God, and God pursued him and brought him out of he found a wretch like me from the song The Amazing Grace. And so the whole poem is about him being lost, but God kept pursuing him and caught him, and he was happy that God caught him and had a conversion experience and became one of the greatest poets in the English language. It's an amazing story.
And for our listeners, that was who again? Who's the author?
Francis Thompson.
Got it. All right. So they're going to be
and
fact-checking
so I
that.
figured the TV series that I'm doing is about people, famous Christians and Catholics who left God and came back, or just had everybody has a reversion story how they came back. So that hound from heaven, always God's grace of conversion is always Him pursuing us first, and then us finally saying yes to that, and then being smart enough to say yes, God's more important than what I'm doing.
Well, I'm thinking about that, and I liked your title. You said reversion story. I like that. And gosh, what was I going to say? I totally lost my train of thought. So, what is the format with your show? Is this a talk show? Is it going to be on television? How are people going to start looking for Hound of Heaven?
Well, it's the first episode is going to be a link. We're going to probably put the link on. It's called St. Joseph Evangelization Network, which is called SJEN.TV, and that'll be it's a free internet. Go on the internet, SJEN.TV, and you click on the link, and you can watch the TV series the show that way. And then my hope is I can pitch the idea to investors and donors, and hopefully either I put it on YouTube or Vimeo, and the nice thing about the social media now is I kind of want to do a podcast with the two, take the audio. It's an hour-long interview series where we start with the conversion part, and then the second half of the show is all deep theological questions.
Whoa.
How do they develop their personal relationship with Jesus? If they have a spiritual director? What's their favorite? How do they discern God's will when they do projects or whatever they're doing? And so we build up to the conversion, how they converted or reverted back, and now how do they feed that personal relationship with Jesus now? So it's kind of the format of the show.
Well, that's heavy.
Yeah.
But that's awesome.
And deep. I like deep. I'm a fan of deep, so I will be tuning in for sure.
TC is Senior Deep.
That's my nickname. Yeah.
Well, Father Darrin, I don't want to cut you short, but we want to honor our time commitment to our podcasts and how we actually connect with that. We want to keep them short so that people can take little things in little bite size. But it sounds like I've just came up with about another 10 questions that I'd love to ask.
I've been sitting here on them, but yeah.
So we'd like to probably invite you back on another podcast.
That'd be great. Especially our podcast comes out hopefully around March 29th or April, the first week of April. If you would like to set up a time sometime around there, we can try to do another show then.
That'd be
Absolutely,
great.
Yeah, we'll have to follow up with you.
And it's going to be also, the podcast will have the same title of Hound of Heaven?
Yeah, and I'm working on that right now, trying to figure out how to do a dual podcast and video. So I'm still working on the details on that.
So, to recapitulate, it's Hound of Heaven with Father Federo.
Fedora.
I'm just kidding. All right, Federo. All right.
I still love that name, man.
Perfect. That is awesome. That is great. I enjoyed it. TC, any last minute questions?
No, I don't think I have any. I just want to say, thank you for all your service for, helping all those people out there and for creating this show. Yeah. Again, I think it's a brilliant idea. I think if you, put it on any social media platform, it's going to succeed. So I hope you follow through. Obviously you are. And just the best of luck to you.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Amazing.
Thank you for the time to be on your podcast. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you.
It sounds like another Eggs Benedict coming our way.
Yes, soon.
Yes, please invite me. I'm hungry.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Take care. God bless you guys.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Fantastic. That was awesome.
Oh, my voice is getting shot. But that was a great episode. Father Darrin.
And I've
What a great guy.
and many times I've been in those same shoes in hospitals, and to be able to shift that emotional mentality from 24 hours of being with families and others and individuals during those moments, and then to turn around and still have that capacity to, hey, I'm going to run with Hound of Heaven and interview people. That's tough.
That takes a special individual, man.
The range of emotions go from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows.
And to be able to mediate those emotions, you know, in that situation right there and right then and there.
Man,
it's a skill.
But what a positive guy, and man, talk about using the value of listening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we touched on it a pretty good amount here today and in last week's episode, but hopefully you guys can see the importance of it and, you know, why we talk about it so much. It's not to just, you know, throw that message down your throat, but there really is an important message in the power of listening, and hopefully we shared some of that knowledge with you guys on today's episode.
Incredible. Wow, great stuff. Hey, thanks again for listening to Opa Sal. Any last parting words, TC?
No, please just send me your positive energy so I can heal and be better by next week's episode.
Absolutely. All right, thanks again, guys. Take it one day at a time. Relax, enjoy the weekend, and have a great next week.
One day at a time. Listen to him. I should have took that advice. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Peace.